It is just wonderful to be back in Oregon, and over the last 15 months, we've traveled to every corner of the United States. I've now been in 57 states.
The 57 states of Barack Obama. When Barack Obama said he had visited all 57 states, was he telegraphing his vision for a future America? If he was, what would those 7 additional states be? In this video, we're going to look at those potential states and what the chances are of that happening.
The air would be as pure as that of the countryside before industrialization. Streets and sidewalks would be immaculate, made from self-cleaning materials that...
Statehood is so important in D.C. that the slogan on car license plates is, "End taxation without representation." That's because residents of Washington, D.C. pay full federal income tax without having full representation in Congress. Numerous attempts have been made to make Washington, D.C. into a state going all the way back to 1867, but it's really caught fire recently. Both Bill Clinton and Barack Obama endorsed the idea of Washington, D.C. becoming a state. As late as 2021, there was a vote for D.C. statehood that passed the U.S. House of Representatives before dying in the Senate.
Statehood for the district is about showing respect for our democracy. It's not just about the district, it's about our democracy.
There's no place out there for graft, or greed, or lies.
Beyond approval by Congress, there's a second problem. The U.S. Constitution specifically identifies the District of Columbia as a federal district. This leads some opponents to argue that in addition to the congressional approval, you will also need an amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Let's listen to what Pennsylvania Congressman Guy Reschenthaler had to say about that in 2021.
The original meaning of the district in the Constitution and the necessary repeal of the 23rd Amendment requires an amendment to the Constitution in order for D.C. to even become a state. Just don't take my word for it, though. Since 1963, every Justice Department, Republican and Democrat, that has addressed the issue of D.C. statehood has concluded that Congress does not have the authority to alter the status of the city legislatively. Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy thought it was inconceivable that D.C. would be granted statehood without repealing the 23rd Amendment, and the result would, quote, produce an absurdity, end quote. Again, those are the words of RFK.
That's the fact, Jack! That's the fact, Jack!
In 1963, the 23rd Amendment was passed to give Washington, D.C. 3 votes in the Electoral College, thereby allowing D.C. residents to participate in the U.S. presidential election. Since the passage of the amendment, D.C. has a perfect record of giving all of its 3 presidential electoral votes to Democrats. Based on that record, it can be assumed that upon achieving statehood, the new state of Washington, D.C. would guarantee the addition of 2 Democrat senators and possibly 2 Democrat members of the House of Representatives, thereby diluting the power of Republican states. That will make it extremely difficult, if not impossible, to pass an amendment approved by 75% of the states. One workaround is to avoid going the constitutional amendment route and going with a trimmed-down D.C. federal district composed of the White House, the Capitol, and the remainder of the government facilities located in the heart of town. The rest of the district could be a new state, perhaps called New Columbia, but even this alternative would require 60 votes in the Senate, which would still be a pretty steep hill to climb.
Wow. That is quite a story.
For the 52nd state, we now look 1,000 miles southeast of Florida.
Welcome to the Caribbean, life.
To Puerto Rico. In 1493, Christopher Columbus landed in Puerto Rico and claimed it for Spain. Despite numerous attacks over the next 400 years by other European powers, Spain maintained control of the island until the Spanish-American War in 1898. After the U.S. victory, Puerto Rico was ceded to the U.S. by Spain in the Treaty of Paris. With a population exceeding 3 million and an area as large as the state of Connecticut, Puerto Rico has been classified as a U.S. territory since 1899. In 1917, all residents of Puerto Rico were declared U.S. citizens. But even with the benefit of U.S. citizenship, there still existed a strong movement in Puerto Rico for an independent nation. In late October 1950, a series of insurrections occurred in Puerto Rican cities. The uprisings were all suppressed by force by police and the National Guard, including aerial bombardment and the execution of prisoners.
A nationalist uprising in American Puerto Rico in the West Indies is linked with the attempt on President Truman's life. In armed clashes in Puerto Rico, 23 are killed, 15 of them policemen. Trouble broke out when agitators launched attacks on the governor's palace, police stations, and other public buildings. Though the island has virtual self-government, hotheads want to sever all connection with America. Here in Washington, 2 of them attempted to assassinate President Truman in Blair House, where he is staying during repairs to the White House. Approaching from opposite directions, they opened fire on the police guards. The president's doctor hurries to attend 2 wounded guards, one of whom has since died.
In 1954, 4 Puerto Rican nationalists attacked a session of the House of Representatives from the gallery and wounded 5 congressmen.
Police hurried to America's House of Representatives in Washington following an attack by 3 Puerto Ricans, including Rafael Miranda, who fired on the senators in the chamber. Fellow gunman Andres Condero and the woman member of the trio Lolita Lebron are hustled away from the menacing crowd. Firing more than 20 rounds from their Luger automatics, the 3 fanatics seriously wounded 5 senators.
All the perpetrators were captured and served the next 25 years in prison. In January 1975, as part of a wider bombing campaign, the Puerto Rican Marxist group called FALN, or English, Armed Forces for National Liberation, bombed a hotel in Manhattan and killed 4 and wounded 58.
What?
Since that time, there has been minimal unrest in Puerto Rico, and it remains a peaceful territory of the United States. In recent years, Puerto Rico has failed to thrive. With a massive outflow of 16% of the population to the U.S., Puerto Rico has been in a perpetual recession. The poverty rate is 45%, and the government has racked up a crippling debt. Hurricane Maria in 2017 only compounded the problem with the loss of 89% of electrical infrastructure on the island, with complete restoration taking over a year.
Everything went like slow motion, like it was like the Wizard of Oz movie, but backwards. You are in the rainbow in Oz, the twister, and then black and white, everything destroyed.
The question of statehood for Puerto Rico is still a hotly contested issue and an ongoing struggle. Like all the other U.S. territories, Puerto Rico has no U.S. senator, no representative in the House of Representatives, with full voting rights, and no right to vote for the President of the United States. The vast majority of residents pay no federal income tax and still qualify for Social Security and Medicare. In 2022, the U.S. House passed a bill called the Puerto Rico Status Act, granting Puerto Rico statehood if the residents voted for it. If statehood was granted, Puerto Rico would be represented by 2 U.S. senators and up to 4 members of the House of Representatives. Here's Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez discussing the Puerto Rico Status Act.
The gentlewoman from New York is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I begin today, I would like to begin my remarks by expressing solidarity with other U.S. colonies, colonized people, indigenous communities, and descendants of the enslaved. Today represents a historic moment. While Puerto Rico is not the United States' only colony, it is its oldest. Today, for the first time in our nation's history, the United States will acknowledge its role as a colonizing force and Puerto Rico's status as an extended colony. The Puerto Rico Status Act begins a process for Boricuas to decide their own future.
Oh, yeah? Huh? Okay.
That bill died in the U.S. Senate. In December 2023, a bill with most of the same criteria was introduced in the U.S. Senate. That bill is currently in limbo, waiting for a Senate hearing to be rescheduled.
I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. Used to be sort of simple to get a voting committee. Now it's hard to become law today. At least I pray that I will, but today I'm